Good morning, dear students. Today we'll study the next chapter, Human Physiology. In Human Physiology, first topic we'll discuss about the respiratory system, that is, breathing and exchange of gases. Now, what do you mean by breathing? Breathing, it is a process of taking in air into our bodies and giving it out again, that is, to take in oxygen which is used for the process of respiration and also removes carbon dioxide from our bodies and then it releases to the air. So this is known as breathing. The parts of a living thing that help it to breathe forms the respiratory system. So the mechanism of breathing, it vary among different groups of animals depending mainly on their habitats. Different living things have different parts in their respiratory systems. Now, in lower invertebrates like sponges, cylindrids, flatworms, etc., their exchange of oxygen with carbon dioxide by simple diffusion over their entire body surface. Then earthworms use their moist cuticle, and insects have a network of tubes that is called as tracheal tubes to transport atmospheric air within the body. Some specialized vascularized structures called gills and vascularized bags called lungs are used for the exchange of the gases. For example, in aquatic arthropods and mollusks, gills, and in terrestrial forms, lungs. Then, among invertebrates, fishes use gills, whereas reptiles, birds and mammals respire through lungs. Here, as you know, in fish respire through gills, amphibian lungs, skin or gills, plants stomata and worms through moist skin. Only the mammals have a well-developed respiratory system. Now, what do you mean by respiration? It is a process which involves taking in oxygen into the cells, using it for the releasing energy by burning food, and then eliminating the waste products like carbon dioxide and water from the body. It is also called a catabolic process as the food is broken down into simpler form. In short, respiration is a biochemical activity taking place within the protoplasm of the cell and results in the liberation of energy. Now, some differences between breathing and respiration. First, breathing is a mechanism by which organisms obtain oxygen from the air and release carbon dioxide. Respiration, it includes breathing and oxidation of food in the cells of the organism to release energy. Next difference, breathing, it is a physical process. Respiration, it is a biochemical process. Next differences, it involves lungs of the organism in breathing. In respiration, it involves the mitochondria in the cells where food is oxidized to release energy. So these are some differences between breathing and respiration. Now we'll study about human respiratory system. These are the parts of the respiratory system. Here you can observe the different parts of the respiratory system in human. First comes the nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchioles, bronchi, alveoli, lungs, diaphragm. So these are the parts of the respiratory system. So here in human respiratory system, it is chiefly divided into two components. One, respiratory tract, second one, respiratory organ. First we'll study about the respiratory tract. Respiratory tract is a passage which allows movement of inspired and expired air in and out of the lungs, that is, inhalation of air and exhalation of air, that is, taking in of oxygen and giving out the carbon dioxide. Here the respiratory tract, it consists of the following parts. First one, nostrils, nasal chambers, internal nares, pharynx, larynx, trachea. Now we'll study these different parts of the respiratory tract. First, we'll study about the nostrils. Here, the two nostrils are the openings of the nasal cavity and lie above the mouth, and they are separated by the septum. That is, we have a pair of external nostrils opening about the upper lips. Then it leads into next, that is the nasal chambers. Nasal chambers, a pair of passages in the head above the palate, and they are separated from each other by a septum. Each nasal chamber, it is divided into three regions. First one, vestibular region. Second, respiratory region. Third, olfactory region. Now let us study about these three regions. First, vestibular region. It lies within the external nares. It is a short and lined by hairy skin. Its function is acts as a filter and prevents the entry of dust particles. Next, we study about respiratory region. It is the middle region lined with respiratory epithelium, ciliated and rich in mucus glands. Next, we study about olfactory region. The upper region of the nasal chamber lined with olfactory epithelium. Its function is it acts as an organ of smell. Next, we study about the internal nares. Internal nares are the openings of nasal chambers in the roof of the nasopharynx and are closed by uvula during swallowing. Next, we'll study about the pharynx. The pharynx is the part of the throat that is behind the mouth and nasal cavity and above the esophagus and the larynx. It is a short vertical, approximately 12 cm long tube behind the buccal cavity. Here in the pharynx, it is divided into three parts. First one nasopharynx, second one oropharynx, third one laryngopharynx. Now we'll study about these three types of pharynx. Nasopharynx, it is the upper part of the pharynx which extends from the base of the skull to the upper surface of the soft palate. So the nasal chamber, it opens into the nasopharynx, which is a portion of the pharynx and common passage for food and air. Next, oropharynx. It is the middle part of pharynx in the front of the buccal cavity. Third one, laryngopharynx. It is the lower part of the pharynx which leads into two tubes, that is the trachea and the esophagus. That is, the nasopharynx opens into the trachea. Next, we study about the larynx. So larynx is often called Adam's apple because it is more prominent in men than in women. A cartilaginous box, it helps in production of sound, hence called sound box. Means larynx, it is called as cartilaginous box which helps in sound production, so it is known as sound box. It is the enlarged upper end of the trachea situated in the neck on the level of the 4th to 6th cervical vertebrae. This larynx open into laryngopharynx by a slit-like aperture called glottis, and the glottis bears a leaf-like cartilaginous flap called the epiglottis. Nasopharynx, when it opens through the glottis of the larynx region into the trachea, during swallowing, glottis is covered by a cartilaginous flap called epiglottis. Why? Because to prevent the entry of food into the larynx. So here you can see this is a diagram of the bronchi, bronchial tree and the lungs. Here you can see the larynx part which leads into the trachea, then it leads into primary bronchi, then it leads into secondary bronchi, then it leads into tertiary bronchi, then it leads into bronchioles, and the terminal band of the bronchioles, they form the alveoli. So this is the part of the respiratory system. Next, the bronchial tree. Here we'll study about the next part, that is the trachea. Trachea, it is called as windpipe, which is approximately 4 inches long, extends from larynx to the middle of the thoracic cavity, where it divides into the bronchi, that is the right and left primary bronchi. One major branch enters each lung. The right primary bronchus divides into the secondary bronchi, which extends into 2 lobes of the left lung. Then the secondary bronchi divides into smaller tertiary bronchi and further into smaller bronchioles. The small terminal bronchioles give off the respiratory bronchioles, which divides into alveolar ducts, which forms the alveoli. So this is called the bronchial tree, where the trachea divides into primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, and then bronchioles, and then into alveoli. The next, we'll study about the respiratory organs. The main respiratory organs are a pair of lungs. The branching network of bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli, they form the lungs. The lungs are 2 in number, fill the chest cavity, lying one on each side, separated in the middle by heart. Lungs are covered by a double-layered pleura with pleural fluid in between them. So this fluid acts as a lubricant, permitting the lungs to move freely in the thoracic cavity during breathing. So the bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli, they all together comprises the lungs. Here, the lungs covered with the mediastinum, thoracic cavity, diaphragm. What do you mean by the mediastinum? It is the space in the thoracic cavity between the two lungs. It includes pleura of both the sides. Then, thoracic cavity means it is a hollow cavity and has 2 pleural cavities, each enclosing a lung. So it is barrel-shaped, bounded at the back by backbone and at the front by breastbone. The sides are formed by the ribs. Next, what is diaphragm? A sheet of skeletal muscles, dome-shaped muscular partition separating the thorax from abdomen anteriorly at rest and attached to the lumbar vertebrae and posteriorly to ribs, performs an important role in the respiration. So here the lungs are situated in the thoracic chamber, is commonly known as airtight chamber because it is formed dorsally by the vertebral column, ventrally by the sternum, laterally by the ribs, and lower side by dome-shaped diaphragm. Thank you.